Hello everyone, welcome to week number 9 of eDesign 100S, where we'll be doing lab number 8. For those of you who don't know me, if you're listening in from another section, I am Section 2 Lab Instructor Craig Rambish. This week we'll be doing lab number 8, which does use Autodesk Inventor software. If you do not have that software yet, when you click on computer lesson number 8, there is a link where you can download the Inventor software. If you click on that, you will need to create an account and just say that you are a student at a university. Use your university email if it asks you. Once you get signed in, choose your version and operating system and you'll be ready to go. I recommend using the 2019 version because that is what we have at school. If you use that, all of the files you create will be compatible. If you don't want to load the software on your own computer, you can also use Penn State's Remote Lab. If you go to cloud.bd.psu.edu, that'll bring this up, and scroll down to where you find the Remote Lab for Students section. You can either follow these instructions here to connect to one of the lab computers directly in our lab, such as the AMIC lab. So check the lab status tool. If you want to do AMIC 209, you'll have to copy and paste one of these computer numbers here. Once you download the remote desktop tool, you'll paste your computer number here. Then also you can copy and paste .add.psu.edu. And when you log in, the instructions, if you need them, are here. Make sure you type PSU / then your user ID number, and use your regular password and you'll be good to go. That will log you into the remote desktop, basically just like using the computer at school, a little bit slower because it is over the internet, but you also have the advantage of being able to save things direct on your X drive, or being able to open files that you have from your X drive. So, we will be also using the Autodesk Inventor textbook for this lesson. Chapter 1 and 2 are up on the Lab 8 page, as well as the Computer Lesson 8 page. Also on the Computer Lesson, on the Computer Lesson 8 page, you'll see you do have a reading quiz that is due this week an hour before your lab. Same as every other week, don't forget to do that, because that's not going to change just because we all are hiding from the coronavirus. Lab 8 will be 3 different things that you'll need to turn in. Now, this does say hard copy prints and electronic files. Since we're not getting together, instead of hard copy prints, we'd like you to create PDFs, and I will show you how to do that as we go on through this lesson. But you have the Chapter 2 lesson, the adjuster. That is the walkthrough. I will do that with you here. Then you have Chapter 2 exercise number 1 and 2, the inclined support and spacer plate. Those are at the end of Chapter 2. Those are part of the PDF that you have access to on Canvas. So once you have Autodesk Inventor, you'll go to Autodesk Inventor 2019 and Autodesk Inventor Professional 2019. Should be the same for your PC or any of the ones on campus. It might take a little while to come up. And once it does, you should see a page that is similar to this. This is the Getting Started page, where you'll find your projects. So if you're making several different projects, it's nice to have them split apart. Place to make new things. You'll also have some useful things like the What's New button up here in the top. When you click that, it will take you to the Autodesk Inventor webpage, where you can find some tutorials on essential skills. These are pretty nice. Our textbook does a great job, but if you like watching videos to help you out, these are also pretty good. All these on the bottom here are subjects that we will cover this semester, so you'll probably want to watch these. Another place you can find some tutorials is in this area up here, the tutorial gallery. If you click on this, it will take you to where we've got some more tutorials. Again, these are things that we do go over fairly thoroughly in the textbook, but sometimes it's nice to have another example of the same concept. So if you go back to the home page, one of the things that Chapter 1 asks you to do is to create a project. So we will go to Projects here, and if you go down to the bottom to New, you do want a single user project, that's fine. And let's call it eDesign. And I am just fine with having it in the default workspace. If you're not, you can change that to wherever you want it to be. Especially if you're on a school computer, you might want to adjust that so it goes onto your X drive. And it'll probably tell you that the path doesn't exist, which is probably good, because that means you're not overwriting anything. Yes, it should be created. Now in this area here, I can select which project I want to use. I'm going to use my eDesign project. And you will want to read through Chapter 1 of your textbook. That gives you a lot of the basics of using this program, but I'm not going to go over that again here. We're going to go right into the lesson in Chapter 2, the adjuster design. So I'm going to select my eDesign project, and I'm going to go up to the top here to New, and I want an English US units part because I want it in inches, and I want a standard part, not doing sheet metal. So I select those two options and click Create. Once this is loaded up, you can see it as they point out in your textbook on page 2-6, the file menu here, the quick access toolbar up here, which has things like making a new file, opening, saving, undoing and redoing, going back to that home page, etc. Then you have the ribbon toolbar here. This will tab you through things like the 3D model area, the sketch commands, annotate commands, inspect tools, etc. Most of what we're going to be doing is going to be in the 3D model and the sketch areas. So those are going to be your most important commands that you're going to want to focus on. Over here you have the model browser, and things can come in folders. The origin folder has your X, Y, your XZ, and your YZ plane. And if you hover over them, they show up, as well as your axes and your center point. You can also toggle their visibility. So if you right click on one of those and click its visibility, it will show up. You don't necessarily need to have those around all the time, but it's kind of nice to have. Then you have the graphics area here. If you click with your middle mouse button and drag it around, you can move things around the screen. If you shift and click with your middle mouse, you can rotate things around. You can also do that by left clicking on the view cube up here and dragging that around. And if you get a little out of sorts and you want to go back to the home view, click the home, and I'll take you right back there. And you can hover over any of these planes to see what they are. Now we're going to create a sketch. So we'll start by clicking Start a 2D Sketch, and that will allow you to create a sketch on any of these planes, and you can click them over here, or you can click them in the graphics area. So let's make it on the XY plane. Once you do that, it should turn and face that front plane, and you're ready to start your sketch. Page 2-9 gives you some advice on things you should do when you're creating a sketch. Make it proportional to the desired shape. Try to keep your sketches simple. Exaggerate your features if you need to. Don't let anything overlap each other, and make sure that you are forming a closed region. So 2-10 walks you through some things about sketching. 2-11 walks you through things about the geometric constraints, vertical, horizontal, etc. Most of those should be fairly self-evident as to what they mean, but that also walks you through how you can see those constraints, how you can prevent constraints from forming by holding the control key while you're sketching. And now what we want to do on page 2-12 is we're going to start sketching. So we're going to make a line first. Let's go up to the top left and select a line, and we'll just follow the instructions. It wants us to start at the lower left hand corner. If you just click and let go, then you can move your mouse, and you'll notice as you move up and down, the graphics will kind of stick a little bit when you get to a horizontal line. That's nice. You can also see to the bottom right of that cursor, there's a little screen showing you the horizontal constraint, indicating that that line is horizontal. Then once you click, you can insert a new line from there, and again the graphics will stick, and it'll show you the vertical constraint once you're vertical. So keep drawing and keep going until you get to here. Once you get here, and again it will stick, and it'll show you that dotted horizontal or vertical line, showing you that you are directly above that original point you sketched. That's nice. You can click there, and then you'll be able to close up that drawing. This doesn't look exactly like what they've drawn on the page, which is fine. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be approximate. The next thing we're going to do is apply some dimensions. We'll use the general dimension tool here. And the first one that they want us to add is along the bottom. So if you click on that line, it will give you the length dimension along the bottom. You can also click dimension and click the left and right sides of that line, and it gives you the same thing. So we'll dimension that one, and as it says in the book, we'll leave it at the default. Next, we will go along and add a couple of more dimensions. We'll do the left side, the top, and the right over here. Now all of these have dimensions to them. We don't need to dimension this because we have the left side dimensioned and this short side here. So this is a driven dimension. It is already known. Next, we're going to edit some dimensions. You might need to zoom and pan. So you can use your mouse in and out to zoom. You can middle click your mouse and drag it around to pan. If you shift and middle mouse and drag, it will rotate things around, and then you probably want to go back to having the front as the view that you're looking at. So you can click on the front face of the view cube and it'll bring you back here. Now we want to edit some of those dimensions, modify them. So all you really have to do is double click that dimension, and we want to change this to 2.5 inches. When we do, it'll automatically update the size of our drawing here, our sketch. And when you hit 2.5, you do not need to include the units as long as they're not changing. So it knows that you want them in inches if you just put 2.5. Now it's kind of stretched our sketch out a little bit. Go into the next page, it gives us dimensions that we want for the other side, so let's keep editing dimensions. We'll change this one next to 2.5 inches as well. Change this guy to 0.75. And also this one up here to 0.75. Now, something that they don't ask you to do in the text, but that I think is important, is to make sure that this sketch is fully constrained. If you look at your bottom right here, it shows 2 dimensions are needed. That is because right now, although we have size dimensions for these, it's kind of floating around in space because it can move up and down, and it can also move left and right. So we can fix that by adding dimensions to the planes or the axes. We can also use our constraints here. So I like to use the coincident constraint because it's a nice quick way to make things dimensioned quickly. So we'll use the coincident constraint. We want the center point, that's our origin point, and this point in our drawing here, our sketch, to be coincident. So if we click both of those, bam, now it is aligned along both of these axes, the X and Y axis, and you'll see at the bottom, fully constrained. Now we can click Finish Sketch up here. That will take us back out of our sketch, and I am going to hide these planes again because we don't need to see those right now, so I'll right click on those and click their visibility to get rid of those. That's a personal preference, you don't need to do that. Next, we are going to take that 2-dimensional drawing we made and make a 3-dimensional part out of it by extruding. Extruding, when you hover over things, you can see a nice little explanation. Extrusion creates a feature by adding depth. So we'll click Extrude. It's already selected the profile that we have made here, which is nice. And the option that we want over here, output, is a solid, and we want it by distance, and the distance we want it to be extruded is 2.5 inches. My preference, which is not noted in the book, is to use a symmetric extrusion, because that centers things around the plane. If you imagine this is a part that you wanted to make into an assembly later, a lot of times it's nice to have things symmetric about planes so that they're easy to deal with. Again, that's a personal preference and is not strictly necessary. Now, if you hit the F6 key or the home button up here, it will bring you into the isometric view. And the next few pages are just showing you some things that you can do with the view, and I'll let you guys go through that on your own. I won't go through all of those options here, but when we get to page 2-27, we are going to add some more things to this model. We're going to start with an extruded feature. We're going to make another sketch, and as you saw earlier, we can sketch on the existing planes here. We can also start a sketch on any plane that has been created by our model. So we're going to put a sketch on the top here. And if your sketch starts and rotates a direction you didn't want it to, you can use the rotation buttons up here. So make sure, and it might be a little bit tough to tell, but that you've got your line here going vertically that indicates the top edge here. So when you view the top, make sure you have it rotated so that this is going vertical towards the left side here. Now we're in a sketch again. We're going to draw another L-shaped object, and don't really worry about the size, just make it approximate again. Make sure you're catching those perpendicularities when the graphics kind of pause for you, and then close up that box, and then we will again be adding some dimensions. You can either add all of your dimensions and then go back through and edit them, or you can click your dimensions and type them right in. I'm just going to type them in since I know them. They're on page 2-29. So I want this to be 2.5. I'm going to zoom out a little bit and back in. We want this one also to be 2.5. You want this again to be 0.75. And the space between these two to be 0.75. Now, this isn't quite lined up the way that they have it. So, what we can also do is use the edges that exist to this part to line things up. So we'll dimension, if we click on this line, and then when the edge is up here, that'll give us the space between those. Let's make that 0. We'll click on this one and this edge and make that space also 0. Now everything is lined up, and you can see down here we are fully constrained. We can finish the sketch, and we'll hit the home button so we can see everything again. We can select that sketch in our tree over here and hit extrude. We want this profile to be extruded, but the direction is wrong in this case. So what we'll do is go here, direction 2. Right now it's saying distance 2.5, which is correct for what we need. Another option that you could use is 2, and then if you shift and middle click to rotate, if you go to the bottom face, it'll give you the same extrusion distance, but then if you change anything later where this face moves, this will automatically stay aligned with that face, which is nice. Now we'll hit the home button again. Next we want to add a cut feature. So we're going to start another sketch, and we'll put it on this face this time. Now we have it facing directly down on the screen. If you want it to look the same way it looks in your book, you can go back and hit that home key. This time we'll draw a circle, and we don't really care exactly where it is because we'll use our dimensions to put it where we want. So dimension, the center of the circle to the bottom, we want that to be 0.75 inches. The center of the circle to either side shouldn't matter because we're centering it 1.25 inches. And then if you click the outside of the circle, that'll let us do the diameter, and we want that to be 0.75 inches. Now you can see this is fully constrained. If we click Finish Sketch, now we want to again extrude. This time we want, instead of making a solid, we want to make a cut. So we select this guy here for cut. We do not want a distance. We want this to go through all. We want this as our hole, and you can see it is going the correct direction because it is giving you the preview of that hole there. If it's not going the correct direction, you can click these options until it is. Click OK, and now you've got a hole through the middle. Finally, we want to cut off the corner here. So we're going to make another sketch. We will make it on this face, and we will just use lines for this one. line, and if you make sure that you start your line so that it is on one of those existing edges, excuse me, I have hiccups. And then to the corner. Now we have a triangle drawn here, and you can see that these are on the edges because you can only move up and down here, and here you can only move left and right. That's nice. We'll add our dimensions, and I want to select, right now it's trying to get me to dimension this top edge, which already has a dimension. You can right click and tell it select other, and then it'll give you some options. Number 2, when it highlights in red, is the curve that we want to dimension, so we'll click that. We want that to be 1 inch. And then the other thing that we want to dimension is an angle. So if you click on the angled line and then up to the top, that'll allow us to dimension that angle at 45 degrees. You can see down here we are fully constrained and ready to go. Click Finish Sketch. We want to cut, so we will extrude again. Tell it that we want it to be a cut. And instead of a distance this time, we are going to go to next. This will come up to whatever the next thing is that it might run into. So it'll cut through this part, but will not cut through any further. Okay, now that looks good. This one is ready for saving, printing, and uploading to Canvas. So we can go to File, Save As, and you can choose where you want to put it. So right now I am going to leave it in my default folder, which is Documents, Inventor, eDesign, because that's where I told it I want my project to save files. We'll call this Adjuster and save it. Okay, and now for the printing part. Instead of printing actual hard copies, we're just going to make PDFs, and you guys can upload those to Canvas with your other files. So if you want your background to look like mine, the first thing you can do is go to, this is under Tools, Application Options, Colors, and then you change the color scheme to presentation and the background to one color. So I don't know if it was on presentation before. It may have been on a gradient background. If you change that to one color, it gives you the white background. Hit apply and close. And for all prints and for your PDFs, we do not want to see this shaded version of the part. So go to View, and the visual style will change to wireframe with visible edges instead of shaded with edges. Now you can still see some shadows here. We don't want to see those when we're printing. We want to save as much ink as we can. So click on Shadows, and anything that's selected you can unselect. Now we have no shadows. This looks like what we want to print. Go to File, Print, Setup, and would like this to be in landscape so that it prints nice and large. Hit the Home key so that it zooms in to fill the screen nicely. File, Print. If you want to, you can go to File, Print Preview. So print, oops, sorry. File, Print, Print Preview. That looks great. This is what it's going to print like. That's what I'd like to see. So, File, Print. If you're like me and you don't have a printer hooked up to your computer, it probably will default to Microsoft Print to PDF, but otherwise you can select that here. Click OK. It will save a PDF file for you. I want it to save in the same place, so I'm going to go in Documents, Inventor, eDesign, and we'll call this Adjuster again, and it's going to be a .pdf, save. Now I have both of those ready for when I want to upload them to Canvas. So you will, for lesson number 8, you'll have this part, and then in your inventor text you'll have number 1 and 2 from chapter 2, the incline support and spacer plate. Both of these are basically a 2D sketch, and all you have to do is extrude them to the thickness that is listed here. So those are fairly simple. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me or your lab instructor. And otherwise, have a great week.